After taking down the Bears on Sunday Night Football, the Chargers find themselves in prime time once again, this time on Monday Night Football with an opportunity to go on a winning streak. But it's not going to be easy going up against the Jets defense, which is one of the best in the NFL.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Jets fans and Chargers fans. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside David Droegemeier, the host of Locked On Chargers. We're here on Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network to preview this Monday night game between the New York Jets and the Los Angeles Chargers, not the San Diego Chargers. You should know this Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase Locked On NFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. David, great to be with you. AFC East, AFC West matchup. How are you today?
I'm doing extremely well, man. It's good to come off to after a win, finally. I mean, it's been a really rough couple of weeks. The last couple of weeks, a couple of really tough opponents that the Chargers have had to go up against with the Cowboys and the Chiefs. And then so to be able to get back on the win column against the Bears at least brings a lot more positive vibes in Chargers world.
And of course, I've been saying this practically every week of the Jets season, but I think when the schedule makers put this game out there, and this was a Monday night primetime game, I think they had the big quarterback matchup in mind, Aaron Rodgers versus Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Instead, we get Zach Wilson versus Justin Herbert. You know, I was actually thinking back because this Jets season, at least heading into it, there were lots of comparisons with 2008, the year Brett Favre played with the Jets, with the last time the Jets traded for a Packers quarterback. These teams actually played a Monday night game that year. It was a very ugly game for the New York Jets. It's a game where Favre did not know the Jets system, so he was throwing the ball nowhere near the receiver. Balls were being run back. So Jets certainly hoping for a better result. Chargers hoping for the exact same result. Jets are hoping for a better result. David, let's talk about the key storylines for the Chargers.
Yeah. So for the Chargers, man, I mean, it's all about getting back to 500. Can the Chargers get back to 500, especially when you look at who the Chargers have to play after the Jets? Obviously, we are definitely not looking past the Jets. The Jets are a very scary defense and a very, very good football team that the Chargers need to give their full attention. But the Chargers have to have this game. They have to win this game because the next game is against the 6-2 Lions. And the Lions are a fantastic football team, a very physical football team. So they're a team that you don't really want to go into it falling to 3-5 and not having that positive momentum going into it. And also you're going up against another AFC opponent, an opponent that right now is ahead of the Chargers in the playoff seeding. So this is a game that has some, tiebreaker implications to it. But the Chargers, I think it's all about getting back to 500 and trying to traverse the rest of your season.
And I think that there's something to be said for, getting on a little bit of a roll. I think sometimes, you get a big win, but then you can stall with the loss. So it's one of those things when you finally get things on track after, kind of an uneven start, you want to keep it going.
Yes, definitely. 100%. I mean, and it's all about that energy, right? I mean, when you're winning, everything feels good. You can, forgive some of the issues that are going on with your football team. When you're losing, everything gets magnified. Everyone's feet is held to the fire. Everybody is on high alert, right? You're a lot more relaxed after you get a win. All the guys are relaxed. The coaching staff is a little in better moods. And when you're in a better mood and you're feeling better, you perform better. So it really just ties into everything.
David, you may feel this as well, but I feel as host of Locked On Jets, there are times where I'm less podcast host and more armchair psychologist. This was especially true after Aaron Rodgers got injured. I told people in my real life, it's like I feel like I'm like kind of like the unofficial therapist for a lot of Jets fans. It's so true. I say, when the Jets win, they have a great game. I always say you're never as good as you look at your highest point, but you're never as bad as you look at your lowest point.
Right. 100%. And, when we're talking about the biggest storylines, what do you think would be the biggest storyline for the Jets in this one?
I want to be positive because this team's on a 3-game winning streak, and this team looked like it was in big trouble early in the season, but I have to go to a pretty negative place, and it's the offense right now, but it's one unit in particular. Now, Zach Wilson generates most of the headlines right now. He's the quarterback.
Right.
We could do multiple shows just on Zach Wilson's trajectory over his 3 years with the Jets, but it's not Zach Wilson. It's the offensive line.
Yeah.
This offensive line has suffered a lot of injuries. Last week, they had to play 3 different centers within one game. Their starter, Connor McGovern, got injured. The backup, who's Joe Tippmann, who's been playing guard for them, a rookie out of Wisconsin, wasn't even playing. The third string center, Wes Schweitzer, goes down in that game. Jets end up playing a guy, Xavier Newman, and the first time he snaps the ball, it was a fumble. It was a botched exchange. The Jets lose 2 offensive linemen in this game.
Is it true they both were put on IR?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And again, like the number 2 guy, Tippmann, who's been the starting right guard, has been injured, so it's not clear he's going to be back. Jets have a tackle on IR. Jets have had a tackle on IR. Dwayne Brown sounds like he's coming back to practice this week, but it's not sure whether he's going to be in the lineup. David, the Jets won that game, and there's a lot to love about what the Jets did. The special teams unit looks great. The defense looks great.
Yeah. But
you got to be worried about this offense, and in particular, this offensive line. Because, look, Zach Wilson's got issues. I don't think Zach Wilson's played well the last couple of games. But I don't think Zach Wilson's the biggest problem. The receiving group's not great. They got issues beyond Garrett Wilson's great. Garrett Wilson's excellent. Definitely. After him, it gets very shaky. But this offensive line played terribly against the Giants. I mean, it was unbelievable. Constant breakdowns. They couldn't run block at all. And it's not that hard to understand because they have so many backups in there. And it's not just David, I feel like there's a double whammy when you lose the starting offensive lineman because number one, the guy that replaces him isn't as good. But second, offensive line's so based on chemistry, knowing what the guy next to you is going to do. And when you have to shake it up constantly, it leads to issues.
Yeah, I mean, how could you possibly feel comfortable playing next to you, right? I mean, the best offensive lines are the guys that are there, snap in and snap out, and really they get the communication down to a unwritten or unspoken type of communication where they're able to just feel what the other person's going to do or be able to communicate with a head nod or a hand gesture. Like, that's when you are able to play offensive line at the highest level. So when you are cycling through guys in and out of the lineup, it's impossible to build that kind of continuity and chemistry that it takes to play offensive line at the highest level.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this, and it's kind of funny because I remember the last time the Jets played the Chargers, it was 2020, and it was the Adam Gase season. It was it was the COVID year, so nobody's in the stands, so it was a weird year all around. But you also had Adam Gase, and the Jets were threatening to go 0-16 at one point that year.
Yeah,
but I remember the Jets were really hopeless, and they actually played a competitive game out at SoFi when they visited the Chargers. This Jets team's got a lot of talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. This is not a hopeless Jets team, but I've been saying, the only thing that the Jets need guys to get healthy because this offensive line we saw last Sunday against the Giants, that's going to ruin the season. Despite all the talent the Jets have on defense, despite an excellent special teams unit. Yeah. I mean, it's scary because a bad offensive line can sink your football team.
Well, not only that, but how can you get anything going offensively, especially with Zach Wilson kind of missing some open throws and being a little bit loose with the football and, turning the ball over. He has 5 interceptions and 5 touchdowns this season. So it's just, hey, if my offensive line is not great, my quarterback's got to be that much better. And unfortunately for the Jets, I mean, he hasn't really played up to that standard yet.
Yeah, they're the quarterbacks who can lift your team up, and they're the quarterbacks your team has to lift up.
That's right.
And maybe down the line, Zach Wilson could be the first kind. Right now, he's clearly the second kind. And Zach Wilson's a better quarterback than he was last year. I mean, last year,
I agree.
Wilson, he was a quarterback who looked like he couldn't even function at all. I mean, he was struggling to get to his first read. He get his first read this year. He can his second read. When he gets the ball out quickly, we might get to this in a bit. He's pretty good, but I mean, they can't. If you give him protection, he can hit some passes. He's not Justin Herbert, but he can hit some passes. But I mean, if they protect him at the level, and I think saying they protected him against the Giants is playing loose with verbiage. They didn't protect him at all. I mean, he's not gonna be able to function at all behind if the line doesn't play better than it did against the Giants.
Yeah, and they're going to be tested, and we're going to get into that here when we talk about the biggest matchups coming into this football game. But the Chargers are top 10 in sacks in the NFL, so they have quite a bit of guys that can get after the quarterback. But we're going to get into those biggest matchups in this one, and we're going to do that right after this. But first, I need to tell you guys about one of my favorite things ever, and that is DoorDash. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? Order DoorDash and save on football and watch party with your favorites. One of the best things about DoorDash is finding the hidden gems in your community and get those delivered right to you. I love scrolling DoorDash to help find places that try to help support local restaurants. This week, the restaurant we are locked on is The Kettle. One of the best comfort food spots in Los Angeles is available for delivery on DoorDash, and they are open late. If you're looking for breakfast, make sure you try the Hangover Scramble or the house-made black pepper buttermilk biscuits and country gravy. If you need dinner, you have to try out some of the house favorites like French onion soup or the pot roast. Get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. That's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. All right, guys, we are back here on Crossover Thursday. John Butchko, Locked On Jets. David Droegemeier here, Locked On Chargers co-host. And we have to continue on this primetime Crossover Thursday edition. The Chargers just played a primetime matchup on Sunday Night Football against the Chicago Bears, where they were able to get back in the win column. And now we have another one going up against the Jets in New York, or New Jersey, I guess, where, we are going to be having another great AFC matchup. But we're going to go ahead and get into the biggest matchups in this football game. And since you guys are hosting, I think I will send that over to you. What do you think is one of the biggest matchups in this football game for Monday Night Football?
I alluded to it a little bit in our first segment. It's the matchup that can destroy the game for the Jets. It's this Chargers defensive line against the Jets offensive line. We don't know what this Jets offensive line is going to look like heading into this game. I mean, we'll find out as the injury reports come out during the week. Maybe we'll start to get a bit of an idea. There are probably like 3 or 4 arrangements the Jets could have on this line, depending on whether guys come back. And part of it's, if Dwayne Brown comes back, that completely reshuffles the tackle position because Mekhi Becton's been playing left tackle for the Jets. But if Brown comes back, he's played left tackle his entire career. They're not moving him to the right side. So Becton will move to right tackle. It's a scary matchup for the Jets. It's a scary matchup against any opponent, but against a team with Joey Bosa, with, Khalil Mack, it's a matchup that can destroy the game for the Jets.
Yeah, 100%. And you better believe that the Chargers, they know that the Jets offensive line is one that is much maligned and one that has been shuffling in and out and does not have a ton of experience, especially on the interior. So I would expect, which is, why this is one of my biggest matchups, is that they will use Morgan Fox, who is one of the Chargers' best interior pass rushers. He has 5 sacks already in 7 games. So I expect him to line up over whoever is going to be playing center for the Jets in this game and to really try to abuse him as much as possible. But you can't just stop there. You have 2 other really, really good pass rushers named Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, who you just alluded to. And, it's all about finding the best matchups when you're pass rushing, right? You want to give yourself the highest opportunity to have success. So I would like to see the Chargers move Khalil Mack on the interior as well. Joey Bosa on the interior, rushing against the center, rushing against the guard. We've seen more and more examples of that this year and this season. I expect the Chargers to follow suit on that and try to maximize their best matchup on defense.
The one thing I'll say for the Jets offensive line, their center position, the guy that came in, Xavier Warren, who was promoted off the practice squad, he actually made a play that saved the game for the Jets because they needed a field goal. It was unbelievable. The Jets won this game. They were down with 24 seconds left. They needed a field goal. They were on.
It was a great drive.
No timeouts, and they ended up getting into field. They got helped out by a penalty that stopped the clock.
For sure.
But they completed a pass to Allen Lazard to get into field goal range and the clock was running down. They were out of timeouts. I thought the clock was going to run out, and somehow they got up and spiked the ball. And so they did a great job. And Xavier Warren, the center, did a great job there. But other than that matchup, that's the only good thing I'll say about the Jets offensive line heading into this one. But, I'll give you a matchup that may not be, I think it'll have an impact on the game.
Yeah.
It's just more I'm going to watch it because it could be a fun matchup. And that's Jets linebacker Quincy Williams against Austin Ekeler. And Quinnen Williams is actually his brother. This is Quinnen Williams' brother. He was claimed off waivers by from Jacksonville 2 years ago. stepped into a starting linebacker role and been very up and down the first 2 years. It's a win. It was still a win because, you got a starting linebacker off waivers, which you usually
that's pretty special. That doesn't happen every day. Yeah.
So the Jets re-signed him this offseason, and they signed a modest deal. It was one of those deals you felt like it's not a terrible deal, it's not a great deal. Hey,
right.
Dude knows
the player
system.
Got rewarded for some decent play, right?
Yeah. It's like he's been unbelievable this year. He's become my favorite player on the Jets. He's just a really fun player to watch. Just flies all over the field. The first 2 years, that was good and bad because he was just as likely to run himself out of a play as he was to make a big hit. So it was always exciting. This year, he's channeled it much better. He's a big hitter, covers a ton of ground. It's going to be a heck of a matchup for him against Ekeler. And look, it's going to be important because these are both big time players. But it's going to be a really fun match. It's just one I can't wait to watch.
Yeah, just from a football perspective, right? Take away the Jets analyst, the Chargers analyst, just from two football players going up against each other. Yeah, that one should be special. And for Austin Ekeler, the Chargers finally got Austin Ekeler involved in the receiving game, in the passing game in the last game against the Bears, where he had over 90 yards receiving and he was able to take a screen pass to the house for a touchdown. And we have been clamoring for that because Austin Ekeler is a guy, even if you are checking the ball down to him, he's a guy that moves the chains. He gets first downs because he is so hard to tackle. He's so low to the ground. A lot of defenders don't really see him. He's a lot stronger than he looks, and he has some tremendous burst and wiggle in the open field. So for him, he is a guy that has to be part of the passing attack for the Chargers because that's been one of the big issues with this team is not being able to stay on the field and put together some consistent drives. The running game is a huge part of that as well. And that's, not been good enough for the Chargers the last couple of games. They have not been able to run the football with any kind of success or consistency. And I think that's partially why their second half offense has been so bad as a result of it. They've really kind of just trying to beat their heads against the wall a little bit, trying to run the football when maybe, you might have some more success in the quick passing game to try to supplement that running game and that aspect of it. I just think that the Chargers haven't been dynamic enough in that part of the game, and it's had a huge impact in their inability to score points in the second half.
David, big picture, I think this is a really interesting game because in many ways it's strength versus strength, weakness versus weakness. I think, the stronger unit on the Jets is clearly the defense. Stronger unit on the Chargers is the offense. And then the Jets offense versus the Chargers defense. I mean, I may joke and say it's the stoppable force versus the movable object. It's to a weakness versus weakness. So I think in many ways, this is what makes it an intriguing matchup. It's not just that the teams, relatively equal in the standings, but beyond that, it's just the strengths match up and the weaknesses match up. So I think it's an intriguing game on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers, they can't really run the football very well, but they pass it very, very well. They're fifth in the NFL in passing yards per game. But, they can't really stop the passing game on the other side. They're 32nd in the NFL in passing yards allowed, but they're top 5 in rushing yards allowed. They have been fantastic against the run. So I think just, speaking about the run, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't say another matchup for the Chargers is the Chargers linebackers against, Breece Hall. Right, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson are the two big engines that allow that offense to go. I mean, they're really trying to look for those guys and utilize those guys at every turn. So it's for the Chargers continuing to be able to control the running game and force Zach Wilson to have to beat you as much as humanly possible. I think that's probably going to be the game plan. And so it's definitely the Chargers linebackers versus Breece Hall, and then it's the Chargers cornerbacks. Asante Samuel Jr., Michael Davis, Jasir Taylor against Garrett Wilson, who is absolutely one of the most dynamic wide receivers in the NFL.
That makes me feel old, the fact that the Jets are playing Asante Samuel Jr., because I watched them play with plenty of AFC East games against the Patriots that they played Asante Samuel Sr.
Right, right.
You're absolutely right. I'd even take it a step further. I would say that for their role, and I'm talking, a role could be number one wide receiver, it could be starting guard, it could be, backup receiver. I think for their role, the Jets only have two above average players on offense right now, and they are Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Breece Hall is a dynamic number one running back. Garrett Wilson's an excellent number one receiver. After that, it gets very shaky. So those are the two guys. You're absolutely right. Those are the two guys to stop on this Jets offense.
Yeah, I mean, those are going to be the matchups I think that everybody needs to pay attention to in this game, and I think any of those matchups we talk about very well could have an impact on what this game or how this game is decided.
All right, well, you've heard the key storylines. You know about the Jets. You know about the Chargers. You know about how these teams match up with each other now. As we continue this special crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Jets and Locked On Chargers, David and I are going to go give you some predictions for Monday Night Football. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just have to pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Right now, Prize Picks offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. And PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance policies. So PrizePicks is easy. You just have to pick 2 to 6 players. You can pick Austin Ekeler to have more than 60 yards if you're a Chargers fan. You can pick Garrett Wilson to have more than 1 touchdown if you're a Jets fan. It's really that simple. And PrizePicks offers quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. This is what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, it's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL. It's all one word with no space, LOCKEDONNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John from Locked On Jets, along with David, Locked On Chargers. Jets fans, Chargers fans, these teams play each other. We have to wait a little bit longer than the rest of the NFL, though, because these teams are playing on Monday Night Football. Jets have had some interesting games on primetime this year. They lost Aaron Rodgers week 1, as you may have heard if you're an NFL fan, but beat the Buffalo Bills in overtime.
You're not living under a rock, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody knows about that by now. A couple of weeks later, they played the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. They got off to a terrible start. They fell behind 17-0 in the first quarter, came back to tie the game, but ended up losing to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So third primetime game for the Jets this year. Second week in a row, Chargers are playing primetime. David, how do you see this game going?
Yeah, I mean, so when I look at these two teams, we've talked about all the elements of both of these teams and kind of what's going to impact this game. I think, for the Chargers in this game, I think they're going to be able to do a little bit enough offensively. And I feel like the way that the defense has really been playing, they're going to be able to control the Jets running game a little bit, I think. And they're going to make Zach Wilson have to throw a lot more than the Jets want him to. And I think with the Chargers pass rush and their ability to really, really get after the quarterback against an offensive line that, I think we can say is not the best and is still very, very injured. So I think that's a big matchup. Plus, I know that the Jets defense overall is exceptional. So I expect this to be a very low scoring game. But I feel like the Chargers are going to have just a little bit too much offense for the Jets. I do expect it to be very, very close, but I think I'm going to go 21-17. I think Chargers in this one.
David, I feel like I should retire from making picks because last week I picked the Jets to win 13-10, and that was the final score. I finally got one right because 2 years ago, I couldn't get a game right. It was hilarious. Yeah. I picked the Jets to win every week they lost, and then there were 2 games. The first 2 wins at both times they played really good teams. They played Tennessee and they played Cincinnati.
Yeah,
both of whom were playoff teams that year. I said the Jets have no shot of winning, and they won both games.
Right? Yeah, they show up and win. Right? Yeah.
So now I finally got one right. So I should retire. And beyond that, one of the reasons I picked the Jets last week was special teams, and the Jets won the special teams battle. Something we haven't really gotten into, but the Jets have had excellent special teams this year. Thomas Morstead, the punter, having a phenomenal season for the Jets. I mean, he pinned the Giants inside their own 5-3 times.
They had 15 punts in the first half of that game against the Giants.
I think between the two teams, Jets it may have been. It was
15 punts between those two teams in the first half of that game. I don't think I've ever seen that before. That's an insane amount.
If you were a fan of offense, that was not the game for you. It was, the second half of that game, the Giants weren't even trying to move the ball. The Giants,
right? Well, they threw it one. I mean, they threw it one time, and then they ran it 25 times in a row.
They had one drive where they scored a touchdown to go up 10-7, and it was all runs. And from that point forward, they were just trying to run out the clock and win the game 10-7.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And I know that's like sometimes that's something you say, like that's literally what the Giants were doing.
Oh,
Like,
100%. Yeah.
once the Jets tied that game, the Giants were finished because
Yeah,
there
they
was
had no
way
chance. Right. Yeah, because they couldn't throw the ball.
it wasn't just that the offense was cold. It was like the offense wasn't even trying to like move the ball at all. So
Not at all.
it was like they had to like take the ball in overtime.
Yeah.
And like it's as though they were cold because they hadn't really played offense in like 2 hours of real time.
Right.
But anyway, so I think it's a long way of getting to my point here. This is we talked about it. This is strength versus strength. It's weakness versus weakness. Anything can happen. One of the teams could go out and play a bad game. But it could be a blowout. I'm expecting a close game though, just because of the way these teams match up against each other. I like the way the Jets defense is playing right now. Jets, outside of their week 2 game against Dallas, they've been a phenomenal second half defense. Everybody always says, "Oh, the coaches are making adjustments." I don't know what it is. I think it may just be the guys are playing really well in the second half because they're really good players. I think that it's a coin flip game. I like that the Jets are at home. I think that, like I said, it's 2-man offense, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. In some ways, that helps Zach Wilson a little bit because it simplifies things. Garrett Wilson has a really high target share this year because he's the guy he's looking for. They don't have a lot of other great options, and Garrett Wilson's a tough guy to take out. It's easy to say double a guy. It's tough to take him out of the game. Breece Hall's been interesting because the averages look really good. He's very feast or famine. The averages are high, the success rate is low, and he's hitting home runs though. So he can take a ball 70. Last week he had a 50-yard touchdown. So I think that if the Jets get like a couple splash plays, can the defense hold the Chargers down enough? And special teams against, but Jets have, by some measures, had the number 1 special teams in the NFL this season, which is probably one of the reasons that they're winning these close games. It could go either way. I think I'm going to go, let's say Jets 17, Chargers 16.
Okay, that's an interesting score. And I mean, hey, the thing is I can see that definitely being a possibility because the Chargers have really just disappeared in the second half of football games. The last 3 or 4 games, they've scored a total of 6 points in the second half, just a couple of field goals. And so I can see that. I mean, if the Chargers find a way to fix their second half offense, then that definitely won't be the score of this football game. But until they do, and until they show me that they are capable of doing that, I can definitely see that as a realistic possibility.
Yeah, look, I mean, this game could go nothing. This is one of those games nothing would surprise me. I mean, I think that the Chargers could easily win this game, and I think part of this pick is like it's a coin flip game for me, and I'm just going to pick the coin flip game. I'm probably just going to
go with the home team.
The Jets.
Yeah.
Anyway, David, it's been great chatting with you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, and this is going to be a really good game. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. We'll see which one of these teams can minimize their deficiencies enough to come out on top on Monday Night Football.
Anyway, great chatting with you, David, and thanks, Jets fans and Chargers fans, for tuning in. Jets fans, you know me. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets. Chargers fans, you know him. He's David Droegemeier, the host of Locked On Chargers. Friday, we're both going to have great shows for you. We're going to continue to talk about the Jets and the Chargers, probably talk about these matchups some. Until then, take care, everybody. Have a great Thursday. And until tomorrow,